listening to the C4 and Bryan Nehman podcast. Watch the show every weekday at WBAL.com/video. Now, more C4 and Bryan.
With good intentions, Democrats seem to focus relentlessly on the wrongs of the nation, making it difficult for Americans who are proud of their country to listen to the party's other messages. Democrats could remember that two things can be true at once. Ours can be a flawed nation with imperfections, and we can also be an extraordinary nation, one of the very few in the history able to move past its shortcomings, even if progress is sometimes halting. Those are the words of our next guest, who joins us here in studio, Colin Pascal. He's a retired Army officer. He's a registered Democrat, lifelong Democrat, and is a former member of the Veterans for Hogan Coalition. Great to have you here. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, C4. I'm happy to be here.
So you wrote that in an op-ed in the Baltimore Sun about the Democratic Party. As I mentioned, you said you're a lifelong Democrat. You were for Larry Hogan. You see problems within the Democratic Party. What's going on? Do you see not only here in Maryland, but obviously across the country?
Yeah, I'm more than a kind of registered Democrat. You said I'm a lifelong Democrat. I am. Larry Hogan was the first Republican I ever voted for. And I did that partly because I do think there are problems in both parties, and I think the Democrats are very quick to point out the places that we know the Republicans need to change, but we don't do as good a job at looking ourselves and trying to figure out the places that we need to change to better connect with voters.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Colin Pascal is here in studio with us. Once again, a registered Democrat. You heard him say lifelong Democrat. And what also jumped out at me in your piece, Colin, is the fact that you said, it's one thing to talk about America in a way where you're critical of certain issues and want to change those issues. It's another way to talk about America in a way where you're destructive of America or somehow thinking that there aren't any good parts of the country. And that is a turnoff to a lot of voters who might want to be with you, and if you're talking particularly Democrats, if you just tell people how horrible America is.
Yeah, I think that our country's at its best when we're rooted to the good places where we've come from, and I think it's essential for us to acknowledge all of the wrongs, and there were original wrongs. Slavery is an original wrong. Jim Crow's an original wrong. But within the system that our founders built was the seeds that allowed us to then succeed. And I think that when we forget that the beauty of our system is what allowed us to make it better, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice and cutting ourselves off from a history that all of us can take pride in.
And people don't want to vote for that. They don't want to vote for a negative message all the time. They want to see optimism. They want to see hope in a particular message. And not that they saw a lot of hope in President Trump, but they didn't see, like I've told people, it's the difference between a clean glass and a dirty glass. If you present people with a clean glass, they won't go for the dirty glass. But if you have two dirty glasses, people can make whatever choice they want at that point.
Yeah, and I do think that President-elect Trump at least pays lip service, and I don't know him, he may believe it, to the idea that America is a great and special place. And I think the Democrats have done a less good job of doing that. But I'm concerned, what I'm most concerned about is actually not a communications problem. It's not that the Democrats are not communicating well. I'm concerned that my party is actually forgetting that we are a great and special country. And when you forget that, it becomes very easy then to focus on our negatives. And I don't like to just focus on the communications part. It's the ideas that I want us
policies.
It's the policies and the ideas that I want us to get right. And then we can figure out the communications part.
You know, there was a time there when Kamala Harris was endorsed or she became the nominee, there was like the flag waving and the chanting of USA, USAA, which just seemed off-putting. But I'm with you. I mean, it seems like for the longest time, Democrats have been like ashamed of the United States of America. They look at it, the 1619 Project, all that stuff, which has been just like into the bloodstream of the party, that it's like America is bad. America is not good. Of course, we have many faults and warts and everything like that, but there is still the idea of America is it's a country where you can prosper no matter who you are and no matter what you look like and no matter where you come from. I felt like that has been lost from the party for many, many years now.
Yeah, I agree, and it's the part of the party that I've felt the most distant from, actually. I mean, I spent a little over 20 years in the Army because I care very deeply about it, because I believe in our system. And unfortunately, when I would listen to Democratic political leaders, it just didn't feel to me as if they had the same connection to what this place was and how special, if you look at history, we really are. And that may be the root of our communication problem. If we've forgotten that this is an unusual place, then we're not going to be able to talk about it as an unusual place. And I worry that we have forgotten that.
What the Democratic Party got wrong this election. It's a commentary written by the guest joining us in studio, Colonel Colin Pascal, retired. And you write about your own background, immigrant background, Colonel Pascal. And I think it's important to talk about that in relationship to why you inserted that in this commentary. Please explain that.
Yeah, there's a couple things, and this is part of the problem of being a Democrat that's a little bit on the more conservative side of my party, is that I worry sometimes if I don't explain things like that, the farther left parts of my party are going to immediately jump on me and immediately say I'm anti-immigrant, immediately say I'm racist, immediately I'm going to say I'm misogynist. So partly I do that to explain, but partly I do that to help people understand that we don't have to be anti-immigrant to also be pro-southern border control. We can be both of those things at the same time, and it seems to me on the left and the right, but I'm a Democrat, so I'm here to talk about my own party. It seems to me that we can't talk about border policy because we think that somehow negates our support of immigration, and it does not. I'm pro-immigrant, but I'm pro-control of the southern border at the same time. And that's possible, and I wrote that because I want people to think that
And
way.
Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania has said the very same thing that you're saying, is he's absolutely pro-immigrant, but he's also pro-border. And Bryan and I have looked at him as a Democrat kind of being out there on that issue, very similar to what you're saying, Colonel.
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for any politician who's part of the major two parties right now that's willing to step out of the dogmas of their party. I supported Larry Hogan as a Democrat partly because I was so impressed with his ability to step outside of Republican norms. Fetterman does that on the border, and I have a lot of respect for that. And I don't think that anybody should be able to look at a politician, look at the D or R next to their name, and be able to know where they stand on every single position. People need to be their own leaders, and they need to be able to articulate their own ideas. And as a voter, I need to spend some time studying people, because I shouldn't know where they stand on everything simply because of their party affiliation. And that's sort of where we've ended up
drifted
now.
into.
That's right.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. If you're just recently retired from the Army, military obviously is a big thing going on right now with Donald Trump coming into office. A lot of people are wondering what's going to happen. There's been a lot of concern about not being able to recruit anymore for all branches of the military, and there is the belief that it has been weakened and a lot of unhappy people. How would you describe where the military, at least from your perspective of what you have seen over the last few years, where it is today?
I was in the service under Democratic and Republican administrations. I was in the service when President-elect Trump was elected the first time, and I was very proud, actually, that most of those politics stayed outside of the rank-and-file military. And in fact, I had the opportunity to work all the way up through offices in the Pentagon, and I really didn't see the politics invade the military units. Secretary Austin just put out a great note to all the DOD, including the armed forces, talking about how the military is distinct from the political realm, and all of us will stand on the line, defend the nation. And I believe the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of people in uniform right now are just going to do that and not let themselves get caught up in the political back and forth. I am not as much of an alarmist as I think some of my Democratic friends are. I think that we ought to acknowledge the excesses of President Trump's first administration, and there were many, and January 6th to me is unforgivable.
Absolutely.
But the American people did elect him, and I think that our first position right now should be, where can we work with him? And I think the military does that perfectly, which is we have a president and we will work to support him.
But on the flip side, though, there are a lot of Republicans who believe that the military has gone too soft and that there's like this lack of merit that goes on there anymore, that there's wokeism, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, that it's happening in the military, and that is driving morale down and driving numbers down as well. So what about that from that perspective?
Yeah, I have a different. I've seen there are parts of the military's sort of DEI programs, and I guess I'm liberated to talk about this now.
Sorry to put you on the spot. No, I'm just curious as to get your feeling on it.
There were problems that I saw with some of that, and I do think that we sort of had this reflexive reaction whenever there would be an incident that would be labeled sexist or racist. We would all end up in 50 hours of training about how not to do that.
Right.
And I think that was exhausting at some point. I think it was exhausting for a lot of us that didn't view the world that way and didn't behave that way. But I don't think that was our recruiting problem. I actually think our recruiting problem is tied to a bigger issue, which is just a lack of desire to participate in public service in any form. And so I would love to see folks enlist in the military, and I would love to see folks volunteer for AmeriCorps, and I would love to see some kind of national service program because the good economy for a time pulled people away. But really, for me, the fundamental problem is that folks are not waking up saying, before I start my life, how can I give a few years to the country?
Well, Colin Paschal, retired Army Colonel, registered Democrat, we appreciate you coming in studio to share with us and love to talk with you in the future because I do think it's important for Democrats and Republicans to have the type of voice that you bring to maybe help our politics move forward. His commentary is what the Democratic Party got wrong this election. Thank you so much.
Great to have you here. Thank you. Great to be here.
See videos of C4 and Bryan at youtube.com/WBAL radio. Now, more of the C4 and Bryan Nehman podcast.
Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign.